As all of us watching today's coverage know, and as we gird ourselves for the days and weeks to come, it's worth remembering that the wheels of justice grind very slowly, and this is likely the beginning of the beginning in what is sure to be a long process in efforts to hold the twice impeached, disgraced, now indicted criminally ex-president accountable. Knowing we're only at the start of this, there also comes the realization that there's still a lot we don't know, including the possibility of the ex-president also becoming the first president ever to face multiple indictments. It's possible. As we await the results of investigations into the classified documents he squirreled away at his Mar-a-Lago home and his attempts to overturn the 2020 election result because he lost, as well as potential interference in the Fulton County, Georgia election result. But with all the unknowns, there are things about Trump we do know. Things that for years he's done and will continue to do despite the legal woes he faces. One of them is something that our next guest once coined the big grift. After news of his indictment broke, the former president's campaign claims they raised millions of dollars. In the first 24 hours from his supporters, they're now saying that number is up to $7 million. Joining us, Democratic Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren of California. She served as an impeachment manager during Trump's first impeachment trial and, of course, has made regular appearances on this program to keep us abreast of the work of the January 6th Select Committee. I thought of your public presentation in the January 6th Select Committee's public hearings and the big grift because it's happening again, based on Garrett Hake's reporting from aboard the skies between Palm Beach and Manhattan. Is there any recourse for raising money from someone's political supporters to pay your personal legal bills?
Well, there are FEC issues. There are some rules that you can raise funds in a political campaign and legally use them to defend yourself. I don't know what representations he's made in his emails to his followers, nor whether he has taken the steps necessary to legitimize the expenditure on legal fees. But, the ex-president takes any opportunity to raise money from his core supporters, and he's doing that again.
Well, raising money from his core supporters and cozying up to images of violence at the people who threaten him is a story that the Select Committee investigated and told in its public hearings and its final report. When you see him reposting and disseminating images of a baseball bat and Alvin Bragg's face and raising however much he's raised from his supporters at a time when he faces criminal exposure because of money he illegally accounted for in silencing allegedly a porn star, where do your thoughts go?
Well, I'm very concerned about his rhetoric, which is actually even more over the top than in the days and weeks and months preceding January 6th. Whether or not his core supporters will respond with the same kind of mob violence that we saw on January 6th, I certainly hope not. And from the press reports, it looks like the social media does not indicate the kind of mob violence that was planned and executed on January 6th. However, we all know that there are unhinged people in our country who do respond to requests to engage in violence. You don't have to have every person who's a supporter of a political candidate to respond. It's just those people who are on the edge who might be feeling that the president is asking them to take a bat to the district attorney's head. I just think it would be much preferable for our country not to incite violence, to treat this as the way it should be treated. Charges will be unveiled tomorrow. The ex-president is entitled to due process, a presumption of innocence unless convicted, and we'll see this play out. I think it's important for all of us to stand up and support our government, our system of government, the Constitution. And unfortunately, once again, it doesn't look like the ex-president is in that spot.
I mean, Alvin Bragg is a particularly intense focus for Trump and his supporters because he's gone first. We've had a lot of conversations about where DOJ was. I guess if we're being fair, Merrick Garland wasn't there until March after the insurrection. But from March until the appointment of Jack Smith, it is clear from the outside that the events and acts that you and your committee investigated were not under close scrutiny by the Justice Department. I want to show you something Cy Vance said about why he didn't bring charges in the hush money case.
Why didn't you charge the hush money case? Why didn't you ever charge it in 2018, 2019, 2020?
Well, Chuck, I don't want to get into the deliberations that might be covered by grand jury material, but as I believe you know, I was asked by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District to stand down on our investigation. As someone who respects that office a great deal and believing that they may have perhaps the best laws to investigate, I did so. But I think the question is not so much why didn't I do it or we did it, but why this district attorney is doing it. And that really requires us to be patient and to wait. Yeah. This process isn't going to be accelerated by us talking about it. It's going to be moved by the court at the pace the court sees fit, and I guarantee you the court will want this to move quickly.
Have you ever heard of the Southern District of New York or any federal U.S. Attorney's Office telling a local prosecutor to, quote, stand down on something they didn't bring?
Well, I was very alarmed by the testimony or the interview that you just played. You know, I've been involved in cases, for example, when I chair the House Ethics Committee, where we would be investigating a member of Congress, and the Department of Justice would ask us to back off because they were bringing an action, and we always did because we didn't want to ruin their investigation and potential criminal indictment. I've never been a U.S. attorney or in their office, so I don't know what the pattern is, but certainly if the DOJ has a clear path forward and asks a prosecutor to stand pat while they pursue it, that would not be a surprise. But what is a surprise is that they didn't actually pursue that. And then the question is, was it done basically to protect the president? Was it ever their intent to bring this case? And did they interfere with the district attorney's office just to protect the president? That's what came to my mind when I saw that. It was a concern.
Yeah, I mean, in the time frame he gives us is 17 and 18. Obviously, Donald Trump was president. Bill Barr was the attorney general. But that office found that Donald Trump coordinated and directed the hush money scheme to two women, Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels, and then told Cy Vance in that 2-year period to stand down. Would you like to know whether or not Merrick Garland looked at the evidence when he became attorney general and that office was no longer under the thumb of Bill Barr?
Well, if he hasn't yet, I imagine the interview yesterday will cause some people to take a look. It's interesting that the department took the position based on an Office of Legal Counsel paper that a sitting president couldn't be indicted, and yet asked the local prosecutor to withhold on their investigation. So I don't know any more than what's been put in the public arena, but this doesn't smell so good. And I think somebody ought to look into it.